Who would have thought we'd be getting so much more new information about Bob Mueller's investigation, about the attempted prosecution, illegitimate prosecution of Michael Flynn, served our country for 30 years at General, served previous administrations, both Republican and Democrat, in top roles. Who would have thought that Adam Schiff, after that pressure from Rick Grinnell, would finally release the transcripts? Of course, he's blaming the White House for the delay, but remember, last week we were reporting to you that he was holding on to 10 of those transcripts and not letting the Director of National Intelligence team go through the declassification process on those 10 transcripts. So how could they release all of them at the same time? And by the way, those included, we now have from Trump officials and Obama officials. Let me read one for you before we get to the Mike Flynn matter. Former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper testified under oath, quote, this is all before Bob Mueller was appointed. I never saw any direct empirical evidence that the Trump campaign or someone in it was plotting or conspiring with the Russians to meddle with the election. Or how about former acting director and then at the time deputy director of the FBI, Andy McCabe? He said there's a lot of information in the Steele reporting. We have not been able to prove the accuracy of all the information. So you don't know if it's true or not, any of it? That's correct, McCabe replied. That was used, of course, that information in the Steele dossier that they couldn't verify any of, and that Jim Comey even called salacious and unverified, to get FISA warrants on American citizens who they were being told at the FBI, this American citizen is a U.S. intelligence asset, Carter Page.
So let's look at what's happened in the last month. Yeah. Just in the last month. The FISA warrant process, a total fraud on the American people. Mm-hmm. And the Justice Department acknowledged that it was fraudulent and that false information was given and an affidavit should not have been signed and executed and the FISA warrant shouldn't have been issued. Then we have the Justice Department correctly saying that what happened to General Flynn was outrageous, was wrong, and he should not have been prosecuted, and they withdrew their case. Then we have the release of the documents you just mentioned. But I want to be very clear on something here. Justice has been served. The actions of the special counsel against General Flynn were outrageous. The special counsel should be ashamed of the conduct of his agents and his lawyers, and that he allowed it. The Attorney General and the Department of Justice are correcting a horrible wrong. That was my official statement on this, and that, frankly, is even downplayed. What Bob Mueller allowed to happen under his watch, under his authority, should never, ever happen again in the United States. They should be ashamed. They should be embarrassed. And the lawyers that did this fraud on the courts should pay a penalty.
Yeah, I mean, they abruptly quit the case, and they were from the special counsel's team. There were holdovers still prosecuting Michael Flynn. But when we get back to that, this is not over yet for Michael Flynn.
No, because the court has to issue an actual order in the case withdrawing everything. I can't imagine a circumstance where Judge Sullivan doesn't do that, especially when the Justice Department basically confessed error.
Folks, the ACLJ is doing work all across the country on all the issues that you care about, all across the world on the issues you care about. And we're able to broadcast it to you because of your support. We're able to do the work in our country because of your support. We're able to do the work internationally because of your financial support. No amount too small, no amount too big. It all makes a huge impact. Go to aclj.org and donate today.
For 30 years, the American Center for Law and Justice has been dedicated to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms. Because of you, we've seen great success in the courts and Congress concerning the issues that matter most to you and your families. ACLJ Chief Counsel Jay Sekulow.
Our decades-long commitment to the Constitution and the rule of law is at the center of everything we do. The bottom line, our work could not take place without your generous support.
It's a critical time for our nation and our world. With so many challenges facing our country, the work of the American Center for Law and Justice has never been more important. And during this time of uncertainty, there's no better way to support the ACLJ than through online giving.
We truly appreciate your financial support. Without it, it would be impossible to do our work here and around the globe. And the best way to support our work is to make your financial gifts online at aclj.org.
Donating online is safe and secure, and an online gift at aclj.org can be put to work immediately, enabling the ACLJ to continue the battle against abortion giant Planned Parenthood.
These are young people in their 20s and 30s that are doing this, are fighting for life at a whole new level to beat back the abortion juggernaut. We've got a whole group of young lawyers that are defending them.
To protect Christians facing persecution.
The level of persecution is on the rise. It's being reported more.
We're talking about situations where people are put in jail, threatened with death or life imprisonment simply because of who they are and what they believe.
To stand up for our good friend Israel. To work to uncover the corrupt deep state in Washington, and so much more. Make a difference today. Support the work of the ACLJ online at aclj.org. Every dollar makes a difference. Give today online at aclj.org.
All right, welcome back to Jay Sekulow Live. So, Michael Flynn in the Department of Justice, I'm holding it in my hands right now. This is if you're watching on Facebook and Periscope, this is the government motion to dismiss the criminal charges that they were prosecuting. So they're saying dismiss it because of the information that we had was faulty and what we did to Michael Flynn was wrong, that what Michael Flynn was talking about and brought up on charges was immaterial, so not material, not important, and not linked to any actual investigation.
He said there was not a basis of a counterintelligence investigation to be going on in the facts and circumstances that existed at that time. Let me say that again. The FBI concluded that there was no basis for a counterintelligence investigation to be going on at that time. Now, interestingly, even though that was the conclusion, we know that James Comey had sent 2 FBI agents, because he thought he could get away with it, which obviously he's now not, to go interview Flynn. And what's shocking, I'm going to go to Andy Economo on this because Andy's our Sally Yates expert. Shockingly, Sally Yates said she was flabbergasted, Andy, by what James Comey did.
She said she was flabbergasted and dumbfounded that he would send 2 agents in there after the president was in office in order to interview Flynn without coordinating at first with the Department of Justice. I believe she is simply covering herself. I believe she fully knew what Comey was doing and endorsed it. I don't believe her one bit.
We know that Jim Comey now, because the transcripts of Adam Schiff, this all ties into that too, the 53 transcripts were released a few hours after this news about Michael Flynn. Oh, Adam Schiff did fold. And he didn't take weeks to do it like he was first reporting. He took a day or 2 after the Rick Cornell letter saying, I'll release these. And we find out in there that Sally Yates and Jim Comey, guess who they were briefing about taking down Michael Flynn? Barack Obama in the Oval Office. So the Obama White House, at the end of the days of their term, we're still plotting on how to take down who would be the top people for the incoming Trump administration because of, Dad, you said it a number of times during the impeachment argument and before the U.S. Senate, the trial, that this was about policy and it had nothing to do with crimes, criminality. It was about policy disputes.
They did not like the direction in which the president was going to take the country. So what did? They go after the people the president was appointing. So, Harry, what's you reading that motion and on the Flynn matter, what's your conclusion?
Well, my conclusion is that what we have is astonishing misconduct. First, by the FBI in conducting the January 24th, 2017 interview in the first place. After all, the FBI had the word-for-word transcript of the phone call between Flynn and Kislyak in their possession. Number 2, the FBI on January the 4th, 2017 concluded that there was no derogatory information to be had with respect to the Flynn matter. Number 3, there was no basis, at least in my opinion, for launching an investigation of Lieutenant General Flynn on August the 16th, 2016. Keep in mind that on August the 15th, there was text messages between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok confirming what? That they had an insurance policy. And so the question becomes, was the Flynn investigation part of the FBI's insurance policy? And you put that on one side, and then on the other side, you look at James Clapper saying there was no credible information with respect to collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. You have also the testimony of Andrew McCabe saying essentially the same thing. So what we have are lies predicated on lies, and we have a corrupt case brought by Bob Mueller. And so CNN analysts called the Department of Justice decision to drop the charges against General Flynn an astonishing assault on the rule of law.
Yeah, I want to jump in on that point because I saw that too. I thought that was ridiculous. But Clapper was the DNI, right? The Director of National Intelligence. He tells under oath to a congressional committee, no evidence of collusion. Yet Bob, that's the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. And then they still continue with this fraud investigation
I mean, you go to Loretta Lynch's, this is under oath testimony. I don't recall anything up until the time she left office on January 20th, 2017. I don't recall anything being briefed up to me. Just my recollection at this point is not. That means she's saying she wasn't briefed, that there was no information given to her. So if it was something this serious, like the incoming administration had conspired with the Russian government to steal the election, you think that the Attorney General of the United States would know about it. But Dad, what you're seeing more and more, I think, and I go to Andy on this as well, maybe Andy first, is that a lot of these FBI officials, I know he doesn't like to take Sally Yates as word, but it looks like they were trying to keep this away from the DOJ officials as much as possible. Yes. And we now know that Lisa Page and Peter Strzok were cheering when they got this crossfire, was it Razor. On Mike Flynn before there was Crossfire Hurricane, before it was expanded into Crossfire Hurricane. They were cheering because there would be no Crossfire Hurricane if they could not continue this persecution, as you can call it now, this political persecution of Mike Flynn by the FBI. If there was no Crossfire Razor, there would be no Crossfire Hurricane. But yet now, Andy, whether they're telling the truth or not, in testimony a few years ago, they were saying, we had no idea about this, under oath.
Yeah, well, of course they're going to make those statements. They were going to say that there was there was no coordination between the FBI and the DOJ. The FBI was out on a frolic of its own, making its own determination, the deep state, that it wanted to get rid of him. But the reality is that Comey and Yates met with Obama and decided that they wanted to get rid of the people that Trump was going to bring in national intelligence. And among the first of those was General Flynn. I believe that Comey was aware of the instructions, whether it was sub silentio and just a wink and a nod. Yates was aware of that too. And they were all in this together, and that includes the FBI and the Department of Justice, and no one is going to convince me differently.
Van, how is this playing in Washington, D.C.? I mean, I see partisan politics already. I mean, Adam Schiff, with an almost laughable response to this, saying that this was delayed by the White House for a year and transcripts, and that the White House didn't want these transcripts coming out. Why would the White House not want transcripts coming out that have the former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, saying, I never saw any direct empirical evidence that the Trump campaign or someone in it was plotting or conspiring with the Russians to meddle with the elections? Or Andrew McCabe saying, had they been able to prove the accuracy? They have not been able to prove the accuracy of anything in the Steele dossier.
It's a panic mode response, Jordan, plain and simple. I mean, you've talked about this many times, the 10 transcripts that he would not let the DNI send over to the White House to finish the declassification process. And yet now he wants to blame the DNI that the process did not complete. He was trying to have it both ways. But Jordan, let me tell you, I think it is absolutely pouring in Adam Schiff's world, because you look at the totality of what was released today, and we're still going through it, thousands and thousands of pages. But what you have is a consensus. You have a consensus among anti-Trump government officials that there was no collusion. I mean, Andy McCabe, James Clapper, Sally Yates, Loretta Lynch, Evelyn Farkas, Susan Rice, Ben Rhodes, on down the line you go, Jordan. They all say the same thing. They didn't see any evidence. So I would tell you this. I've said on this broadcast many times, why did Peter Strzok have the audacity to overturn the conclusion from the Washington field office in the General Flynn matter? I said it was because Director Comey was behaving the same way. Jordan, I think I undersold that. because now we know conclusively from Sally Yates and Mary McCord and others that James Comey wasn't the end of the line here. It went all the way to the White House. That has now been confirmed.
I want to play what Chuck Todd asked Adam Schiff. Okay? Now, Adam Schiff had sat through these hearings.
No, not yet. Not yet. In fact, there had
No, he started hearings. He had not had his interviews yet.
No transcripts yet.
So
no
he had no transcripts. He was getting his hearings ready. He had not had the interviews yet. Here's what Chuck Todd asked Adam Schiff.
But you admit it's all you have right now is a circumstantial case.
Actually, no, Chuck. I can tell you that the case is more than that, and I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now.
What a lie. I mean, what an outright total
He continued that even after the Mueller report, remember?
Oh, he did it in his release yesterday about this. We'll talk more about it when we get back. Still relying on what Bob Mueller said, but Bob Mueller said there was no collusion and could not prove an obstruction case. And I think after what's come out about Bob Mueller and General Flynn and the FISA cases, you know what I'd say about Bob Mueller's credibility?
Zero.
Zero.
And everybody worked on his team. I feel bad for those law firms who hired those attorneys because they look like a joke right now. Wouldn't want them handling any of my
Flynn's attorneys before the Sidney Powell came in.
But in America, you know what? Justice always wins out. Sometimes it takes time, but justice wins. And we've got a attorney general at the top of the Department of Justice who is making sure of that.
Folks, the ACLJ is doing work all across the country on all the issues that you care about, all across the world on the issues you care about. And we're able to broadcast it to you because of your support. We're able to do the work in our country because of your support. We're able to do the work internationally because of your financial support. No amount too small, no amount too big. It all makes a huge impact. Go to aclj.org and donate today.
For 30 years, the American Center for Law and Justice has been dedicated to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms. Because of you, we've seen great success in the courts and Congress concerning the issues that matter most to you and your families. ACLJ Chief Counsel Jay Sekulow.
Our decades-long commitment to the Constitution and the rule of law is at the center of everything we do. The bottom line, our work could not take place without your generous support.
It's a critical time for our nation and our world. With so many challenges facing our country, the work of the American Center for Law and Justice has never been more important. And during this time of uncertainty, there's no better way to support the ACLJ than through online giving.
We truly appreciate your financial support. Without it, it would be impossible to do our work here and around the globe. And the best way to support our work is to make your financial gifts online at aclj.org.
Donating online is safe and secure, and an online gift at aclj.org can be put to work immediately, enabling the ACLJ to continue the battle against abortion giant Planned Parenthood.
These are our young people in their 20s and 30s that are doing this, are fighting for life at a whole new level to beat back the abortion juggernaut. We've got a whole group of young lawyers that are defending them.
To protect Christians facing persecution.
The level of persecution is on the rise. It's being reported more.
We're talking about situations where people are put in jail, threatened with death or life imprisonment simply because of who they are and what they believe.
To stand up for our good friend Israel. To work to uncover the corrupt deep state in Washington, and so much more. Make a difference today. Support the work of the ACLJ online at aclj.org. Every dollar makes a difference. Give today online at aclj.org.
Outrage from Adam Schiff because, his whole world has fallen apart. First of all, his impeachment attempt was rejected by the U.S. Senate. The president was acquitted. And that was on Ukraine when he couldn't use Russia, remember?
Right.
Couldn't use Russia because Bob Mueller told him there isn't anything here. So couldn't impeach on that.
Although he's still in his release yesterday.
Yes.
Still relies on Bob Mueller, which to me is in unbelievable. I was going to ask Harry about that one. Harry, the fact that Adam Schiff would still rely on Bob Mueller after the Flynn mess and everything else that's gone on the last 3 months is unbelievable to me.
Absolutely, because what is blindingly obvious is that the special counsel's probe was laughably incompetent. It was launched on the basis that firing the FBI director constitutes obstruction of justice with respect to the Russia collusion story, even though that claim was constitutionally suspect from the start. And secondly, we now know that all the players knew there was no credible basis for the Russia probe in the first place. So there is plenty of evidence that Bob Mueller's inquiry from the get-go was illegally predicated, and that is equally true with respect to the investigation of the Flynn matter. One of the things that astonishes me about Adam Schiff is that apparently he went to Harvard Law School. And one of the things that he forgot to learn at Harvard Law School is to understand the underlying facts. The facts do not support any of Adam Schiff's claim. Instead, the facts point to one thing and one thing only. Bob Mueller was one of the most incompetent individuals in U.S. history with respect to occupying the special counsel's office. So I would urge Adam Schiff to rely on someone else and certainly not on his own understanding or misunderstanding of the law.
So many people within the Obama administration. I mean, you even go to the Defense Department. So you had the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, Evelyn Farkas. She goes on MSNBC. She says, I have direct evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. When she was put under oath in these transcripts, you know what she says? Quote, I didn't know anything. I was lying.
Did she say I was lying?
She didn't say she was lying.
She said I did not know anything?
Didn't know anything. It's her direct
quote. So read
quotes.
her first statement that she made publicly, and then I don't know anything.
She said she had direct evidence of the Trump campaign colluding with the Russian government
and then
to steal
under
the
oath.
election. Under oath, I didn't know anything when I made that statement.
So she knows she made a false statement. Of course, to the media, that's not a crime.
She made a false statement to the media. When she was under oath,
she was
quickly told the truth, which was that she was playing politics.
So, Andy, what does this tell you? I mean, this is like you can't even make this up in a movie script.
No, the sad thing is that you've got a figure of clay feet, and that's Robert Mueller, whose integrity, whose acumen, whose greatness, whose sobriety has now been tested and found to be wanting, who is a person of absolutely no moral character. He didn't run that investigation, Jay. You and I know it was run by all his subordinates. We met with him many times, hardly knew what he was talking about half the time, had to be corrected on several occasions by his subordinates. And Rod Rosenstein, I'm not going to absolve him from any responsibility. He appointed him. He gave him the scoping memo. He told him who to target. Look, they took an innocent man and they decided Obama doesn't want him. We're going to kill him. And that's exactly what they did. They destroyed General Flynn's life.
We now know from the transcripts, quote, that this is quoting from, again, the transcripts. President Obama knew details of Mike Flynn's 2016 wiretap phone calls. He was told about this by Jim Comey. So he knew about this. He was leaving office, I mean, literally
in days.
And yet he knew there was this takedown effort of the Trump team that was coming in because, again, it was all about policy disputes and using the law enforcement tools and intelligence tools to take down and hamper an incoming administration because of policy disputes, because they were upset that President Trump beat them in an election, beat the Democrats in an election.
So Schiff comes up with a statement. He's still quoting Robert Mueller, and for a proposition Robert Mueller did not say. So, I mean, it's just,
he's always lying, Adam Schiff. Always has to make his own transcript.
But then I think about what's coming ahead with the Intelligence Committee or with Judiciary under Senator Graham. What do you expect happening there? And what about the Senate Intel Committee? And they made that report. And remember, there was all this serious concern. Here are the witnesses. What were they talking about?
Look, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I was going to say a Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee, I think, fell down on the job on this one because they would have had access to these transcripts. I fully agree with you. But, Jay, I mean, in Adam Schiff's world right now, in the House Judiciary Committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, looking at this, if you roll back the tape, this is what I call the Adam Schiff strategy. He's sitting through these depositions where Andy McCabe says he can't prove the accuracy of the dossier. James Clapper says he never saw direct evidence. Evelyn Farkas says she didn't know anything. Loretta Lynch says she doesn't recall anything. Special counsel came out and didn't find anything. Jay, during that entire time, from 2017 until today, what has been one of the most often repeated lines by Chairman Schiff in front of the cameras, he has very frequently, Jordan played one of them a minute ago, he has very frequently said, I have breaking news for you. I have in my possession direct evidence of collusion or a crime, but I can't share it with you. Wait until the transcripts come out.
Wait until you hear from the whistleblower. Oh,
yeah,
wait, I'm not going to let you hear from the whistleblower.
Yep.
It's Adam Schiff at his worst. I mean, listen, this is it. He said on Chuck Todd again, bite 37.
So you have seen direct evidence of collusion?
I don't want to go into specifics, but I will say that there is evidence that is not circumstantial and is very much worthy of investigation.
Right before that, he said Clapper, by the way. He was talking about Clapper. Jim Clapper, under oath to the committee, the Intelligence Committee, said, I never saw any direct empirical evidence the Trump campaign or someone in it was plotting or conspiring with the Russians to meddle with the election.
Let me tell you something.
So when they were all under oath, they said a lot of things that were different than when they were on cable news broadcasts.
Yeah, well, let me just tell you something. As the person that as one of the people, and several of us on this broadcast that have lived through this for 3 years, what a fraud on the American people.
Mm-hmm.
What a fraud on the American people. Forget Schiff with all of his, pompous and, I have direct evidence. I know information. And now it's the end. Yeah, now it's because we've got a real attorney general. Now it's the end of the world because they can't play shenanigans. You mean they can't sneak FBI agents in to offices that they're not supposed to do?
We're now like a new democracy. It's like we've been reborn as a country. Maybe that's a good thing. We're flushing out the swamp, Schiff.
I think we lost 50 years worth of ground in solidifying the independence of the Justice Department after Watergate. This really puts us back in the category of almost an emerging democracy where the rule of law is not yet firmly established, where prosecutorial decisions are made on the basis of politics.
No, we gained 50 years. We leaped forward 50 years from a Department of Justice that was disgusting, a Department of Justice full of political rats and bureaucrats. And by the way, I hope you bureaucrats at DOJ don't listen to Jim Comey. We don't want you to stay. We don't need you there. Quit, just like that prosecutor did in the Flynn case. Walk away, swamp rats. Walk away. Or else you're going to be exposed. And this Trump administration not being, you notice there's a lot going on in the world, and yet the DOJ is focused. Bill Barr is focused. And so are those prosecutors looking at what they were doing.
Folks, the ACLJ is doing work all across the country on all the issues that you care about, all across the world on the issues you care about. And we're able to broadcast it to you because of your support. We're able to do the work in our country because of your support. We're able to do the work internationally because of your financial support. No amount too small, no amount too big. It all makes a huge impact. Go to aclj.org and donate today.